Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of It's No Secret with Dr. T. With me today is Jodie Krangle. She is a voice actor. This is the first voice actor I've had on the show, and I've got a ton of questions. I think this is going to be really cool. So, Jodie, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fine, and it's probably not morning where you are.
No, it is evening.
So, whereabouts are you based?
I am just north of Toronto.
Okay, I see you're in Canada as well.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. The person I spoke to this morning was from Canada. Two Canadians in one day, yeah.
Yeah, aren't you lucky?
So you travelled. I met you in Atlantic City.
Yes,
at
New Jersey.
the Mid-Atlantic Podcast Conference, which is now called the Independent Podcast Conference.
Yes.
So you travelled from up in Toronto area all the way down for that event.
Yeah, it was around 8 or 9 hours.
Okay, that's not too bad. Yeah,
Yeah, not
I travelled
horrible.
about 30 hours.
You traveled farther than I did. Yeah.
But I'm glad I went because I met a lot of really cool people there, and I met yourself, and I saw it on the side of your bag. What you had your name, but then did you have voice actor underneath it? That's what sparked my
I
attention.
did. Yes. Yep.
And I went, "You are a
Yeah.
voice actor." I said, "What's a voice
I
actor?"
am
do?"
indeed.
So
I wanted to make it pretty obvious.
I know some people might be thinking, okay, so as a voice actor, do you also do impersonations, or you just use your own voice?
I just use my own voice. What I call it is creating audio brands for my clients.
Okay, but what's that entail?
Branding is a whole huge topic
Yeah.
of many facets, but audio is also a way to brand your company because your company's professionalism, their particular feel, if they're casual or not so casual, that kind of thing is all conveyed through the audio that you use as well, including your music.
Okay, so do companies contact you directly and say, we would like you to do a voiceover, or are you contacted by media outlets and say, we need a female to do this particular voice? How do they find you?
Usually through my website or through agents that I work with. I can be contacted directly by the clients themselves or through an advertising agency or a video production company that they're working with. So they make the final decision, but they're working with someone else who's producing the content.
Okay, so just like someone who's an actor, like say Julia Roberts, you're the equivalent of Julia Roberts of voice. So Julia Roberts is sitting at home, and then her agent is out there finding work for her. You have an agent as well that finds voice work.
Yeah, and Julia Roberts still has to audition, and so do I.
Oh, so you have to, okay, so there's an audition process. They don't listen to past
Yes.
things you've done and go, okay, that sounds fantastic. That would be perfect. Or
I wish that happened more often. It does happen a lot. It depends on how they're finding me. If they find me directly from my website, I find that, yes, they've already sort of made their decision by the time they reach out to me.
yeah.
But if they are contacting me through an agent, then they are contacting one agent and they want to hear 50 auditions.
Okay.
So I may be one of 50 people from one agent, and then if they send it to more agents, there could be 300 people auditioning. Like, it depends on how many agents they're talking to and how many people they want to hear from each agent.
So what is it they're looking for? What when it comes to voice, what is it that you think the person or the business company is looking for when they're searching
I
for
think-
that voice?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. The audio branding definitely does come into play. So when they make a call, they ask for someone who sounds like what they're hearing in their head.
Okay.
So there's some kind of an audio brand or marketing angle, I guess, that they're going with in their head when they wrote the script. And what they're looking for is someone who can interpret that script in the way that they heard it in their head and sound authentic. Because the idea is we're reading off of a piece of paper, but it can't sound like we're reading.
Yeah, that's true. So do you change the tone of your voice for the script?
Yeah.
Or, so you don't keep the same voice all the time?
No, I mean, yes and no. It's still me, but it's me from a different perspective. It's me with a smile in my voice. It's me with a little more of a hush, or it's me with really happy smile, like it just depends on, it depends on what they're asking for. Okay, that sounded a little manic, but yeah.
Do you have a grumpy one? Do you have a grumpy version?
I can be grumpy. I've done some political spots that have been more than grumpy. Yes.
So political spots have got to be a little bit more
Oh,
serious, deadpan, straight to
well,
the
it
point. It's
depends.
got to feel like
Yeah.
the voice is taking money out of your pocket.
They're usually not humorous.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
So what scripts do you like doing? Oh, yeah. So keep going.
Oh, well, I was just going to say political these days, especially when you're dealing with the US, they're attack ads, unfortunately.
True. Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of that on both sides. Like, I'm not making any judgments here. I have no skin in the game.
Yeah. Oh, so you're up in
But
Toronto. You don't care what's
yeah,
happening most of the
eh,
time. Canadians are
well, it
relaxed.
affects me, but it affects me in a roundabout way.
Yeah. I saw a good meme the
So,
other day. It was a Gordon Ramsay meme, and it had, "This food is that bad, even a Canadian would insult you." Because Canadians are just super nice people.
well, I like to think so.
Yeah, well, I haven't met a bad one yet. So,
Well, that's good. I'm glad we're holding up the stereotype. Yay.
so what do you prefer doing? If you had a choice of the type of work, is there a
Mhm.
particular niche or genre that you sort of go, yeah, that's what when I get the opportunity to do that, I just love it.
Well, I have patterned my business to work on projects that are 5 minutes of finished audio or less. So I don't do audiobooks, for instance. I don't do long e-learning projects. Typically, what I do is commercial, corporate narration, explainer videos, web stuff, social media. I've done some IVR, like telephone stuff, on hold, you know. And I really, really I love it all, but what really fires me up are the corporate anthems. And by that, what I mean is, here we are. This is what we do. We're proud of what we do, and you should be proud of us too. Those kind of
So it's
videos
an
that you
upbeat,
see on.
positive sort of
They're
vibe that you
upbeat and
give out.
positive.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
what is it about
yeah.
audiobooks? Are they just long and draining?
They're long and draining, and they don't pay a lot.
Oh, right. Okay. So there's a lot of work involved, and they don't want
It's
to
a
pay
lot of
you for
work.
your time.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand why people love to do them if they love to do them, because generally they're from a film or a theater background and they love the multiple voices and they love the stories. And even if it's nonfiction, it's a chance to be maybe a bunch of different people. So if you're an actor's actor, this is the type of stuff that you live for. A lot of people love it, and all the power to them. I give them all of my potential audiobooks. They're welcome to them.
So how did you get started? Did you just sit at home one day and somebody you were talking to a friend and they said, "Geez, you got a really really good voice." How did that
Yeah.
kick off?
It's long and involved, and I'm not going to get into the whole thing here, but it took a long time for me to come to that particular part of a career. I've done all sorts of things from selling computers to SEO and internet marketing to, oh God, I was a secretary in like 95 and earlier. Um, and learning the internet was my escape. It was the way for me to figure out how to up my game and do something different and interesting.
Yeah.
And so learning the web and learning, I'd always had a computer interest, and learning how that translated to the web and making websites and, understanding HTML markup language and all of that interesting stuff
Yeah,
when it
that
was
always sounds
really
like fun.
early.
Yeah.
Well, it was really early on,
Yeah.
so even the graphic design was rudimentary. Like it was, it was exciting. It was really exciting. And so a lot of my early career, and I mean, I was telecommuting in 1999, so I haven't actually had like a full-time 9 to 5 job in an office since then.
Wow, that is a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. I've gotten a little set in my ways, put it that way.
Oh no, I don't think there's anything wrong with being set in your way, especially if you're enjoying the way that it's working out.
hmm But I mean, ultimately, what happened was I've been a singer all my life.
That was I
So
was going to ask that. I thought because of your naturally good talking voice, does that translate into singing?
It doesn't always, but in my case, I've been singing since long before voiceover. I was singing when I could talk, like 6 years old. Like I've been doing it a long time. So that was my first love. And I actually taught myself a lot about the web through running a songwriting website that was a resource for songwriters, helping them with their business and writing and inspiration and all that kind of thing. And I had that running from 95 until 2016. So it was a long, long time.
That was the
And
Muses
it had
Muse.
yes.
Is it still going?
Yeah, it had no, it like I said, it ended in 2016 because the voiceover just kind of took over, and it was much more my passion in that time. So it was time to move on.
So having the
And
audio equipment, you would have,
yeah.
you would have had that because of the singing that you were doing,
Yeah,
and then
in
you sort of
general,
moved into the voice.
yes. Yeah, it took me a while to like build the booth and make all of the stuff that I was regularly recording with a part of my everyday life.
So you have
Like
a
that
booth, you have a
takes
booth
time.
inside the house.
Yeah, I do. This is a 5x4 sound treated booth. So it's not, that's why the sound that you're hearing from me has no echo.
Yeah.
That's the sound treatment. So each of the walls are probably like, trying to do it like that thick or more, right?
So for people who
Because they
can't
have,
see the video, that was about 4 to 5 inches of handspan that I saw then.
yeah. So it's filled with insulation and other materials in order to make sure that it can block out a little sound. It doesn't block out everything because, I'd need a 6-foot concrete wall all over in order to block out all the low rumble, like
Yeah.
a car going by or someone idling their car or a plane overhead, like, some of these things.
I know, it's the same
So
thing.
you
Well,
stop.
I'm doing this in my home office. And as I
Mhm.
said, my acoustics are really good in here because my office is not tidy. So
Mhm.
it's, my piles of books and all that is buffering a lot of the
Yeah.
noise. But I know sometimes when I've gone to do, because most of my recordings I do during the day, so the neighbours aren't home. But when
Sure.
I go
Yeah.
to do an early morning one and birds are chirping, we've got these loud birds.
Yeah.
My God, they're loud. Or I go to do them on a weekend and the next door neighbour decides to start up the whippersnipper. And I'm
Yes.
like,
Right now it's
seriously?
leaf blowers. For
Yeah,
us, it's
yeah.
leaf blowers right now. Yeah.
I'm going,
It's going crazy out there.
need to put a sign up on the fence. Recording. Please be quiet. But majority
It's
of the
hard.
time, it's the sound in here is pretty good, and your sound is spot on, and so it should be because you are a professional voice actor.
Well, yeah. I have to give good sound to my clients. That's what they expect from me. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, the last thing they'd want is to have you talking, and all of a sudden in the background hearing a bird chirp, a dog bark,
No, well,
a
no
blower.
environment is going to be perfect,
Yeah,
obviously. But, if you hear a noise, you stop, you wait for it to stop, and then you go on.
but
Like
that's the
it's,
good part
you
with
know,
audio. What I love about
yeah.
audio is how easy it is to edit. We might be talking like this
Now it
now.
is.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
talk now, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden there's like a drop of a pen, or a sound effect like that. Oh, that was a nice
Yeah.
noise. But if that wasn't supposed to be there, you can quite easily go, oh, if that wasn't supposed to be there, and you can just edit that part out, and it
Yeah.
still sounds quite good.
Cut and paste.
Cut and
It's
paste.
actually, yeah, it's quite similar to making a website, honestly. Like the whole cut and paste thing, it has a lot of similarities to me.
Yeah, because you got involved, like you said before, you got involved in SEO and doing websites very early
Hmm.
on.
Yeah.
All that, everything you learnt then, you're now using yourself with being a voice actor.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have a mute button? Do you
Everything
have a mute button?
I do.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just saw
Well,
you
no,
cough on the video and not one noise
yeah,
came
no.
through. And I went,
Yeah.
that is
You have
pretty
one
awesome.
too. It's on Zoom.
That is,
You have one too. It's
ah,
not just me.
I'll have to remember that.
I just use it.
Normally I'll just, if the person's talking, I'll just cough away and then I edit out my part. Because it's split into 2 tracks, I'll take out the noise from my end.
I see. Yeah.
That
No,
was-
if
that
I'm
was- sorry.
doing an interview, I prefer to make it easy.
Sorry, I just went straight off track there. I just saw you cough and there was
That's
no
okay.
noise, and I went, that was really cool.
Zoom has a great little mute function here that is really fantastic.
Okay, I'm gonna
So-
have to find that button. Anyway,
All you do is run your mouse over it. Yeah, it's all there.
it's all there.
Okay.
I will find it. Oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah, there we go. There's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
mute button right there. Yes, I do know where it
Yeah.
is. So
Okay.
back to what I was talking about. So everything you
Okay.
learned about doing early websites, you would be using a lot of that information now as a voice actor. And in your new website, which is voiceoversandvocals.com, which I will have in the show notes, everything you learned earlier on has basically helped you with that right now.
It has and it hasn't. And it has because I know that I need to hire professionals to do a really good job for me because I have the knowledge of HTML from 1997.
Okay, slightly
So
outdated.
yeah, slightly outdated. So I know that I need to outsource to very knowledgeable and talented professionals. And I will say that any person in any business anywhere should not be afraid of outsourcing.
I think that's a really good tip, is know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and outsource your weaknesses.
Exactly. Or outsource stuff you don't like to do. There's nothing wrong with building a life that you just like.
That's another good tip. So if you've stopped listening right now, you've got some great information there. You can walk away from this. So I want to go back to when I first introduced you and you mentioned about using voice for branding. So can we talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. I have always felt that a company's branding in general is very important in regards to how the public perceives what they're offering, whether that's a product or service. And if that impression is less than professional, then they're leaving money on the table because there are people who won't work with them. And I think it's very important that companies are aware of this. And it's not only their graphics, it's not only the people that answer the phones or don't answer the phones.
Yeah.
It's also how they advertise the videos that they put on their websites. So commercial TV, radio, how their phone system sounds, how the intro and outro of their podcast sounds.
Yeah, true.
There's lots of different ways that this comes into effect. And I don't think people are quite as aware of the audio branding that is behind companies that are successful as they could be.
It doesn't happen by accident.
No, it totally doesn't. And it shouldn't. I mean, there should be someone thinking about this.
Yeah.
It may not be the end result,
Yeah.
like the end company may not think of this, but the advertising agency or the video production company, they definitely should be thinking about that kind of stuff for their client. That's what they're being paid for.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. I know I live in Cairns, which is 150,000 people. And going back 10 years ago, an ad would come on television and all of a sudden people would comment about, wow, that ad obviously wasn't made in Cairns. And I used to hear that and I'd go, wait, isn't that really bad that they'll notice an ad that's not made in Cairns because the filming was better, the quality of the sound was better. There was so many things about it that made it so much more professional. Then I was talking to someone who actually did the commercial and they were a local company in Cairns that did it. But everyone was so used to a lot of commercials being shot by like backyard operators that weren't doing that good a job or could have done it better, that they just assumed, it had to have been done somewhere else.
Yeah. And I mean, the same thing happens when you get local commercials where the owner is the one that does their branding, like their audio branding. The owner is the one that actually does the TV commercial or the radio commercial. And you can so tell.
Yes, that was one thing I made sure I never did because we used to do a lot of TV ads and a lot of radio ads. And I was never I might have been in the commercial, but I had a friend it was a singer as well, who had a great voice and he always did the voiceovers for it.
Yep.
He just had this really deep voice. It just suited our branding really well.
Well, see, there you go. Like you have a branding in mind that is audio based and you made it work in your TV commercial. So I don't think it's a stretch to ask other people to think about that.
Yeah. My wife had a shoe shop. We only just recently sold it. And we had a couple of commercials run on that. and we had two girls that were talking about the footwear that they bought. It
Sure.
was just whoever they got to do the voiceover for those two people was perfect. We listened as soon as we heard it. We went, "That is so good." Anyway, about 2 or 3 years have passed, and back then we didn't keep copies of anything. I don't know why. And all of a sudden we wanted to run that ad again. So we contacted the radio station, said, "We want to reuse that ad. Have you got it?" They went, "Oh, no, we can't find a file, but we'll redo it." So they redid the ad, and we went, the script was the same, but the voices were terrible. And even though they were saying the same thing, and they were just the expressions weren't right. And we're saying, listen to the old ad and just copy it. Eventually, I found a copy of the file, and we went back to the old ad.
Okay, yeah.
So, and it's surprising. It's just the voice. The script was the same, but it wasn't getting the message across like the other one.
So it sounds like the two women that were doing your previous ads were actors. Like they were good actors.
They were great.
able to, well, yeah, they were able to authentically be those people in that moment. And that sounded real.
Yeah, they sounded believable. You listen to it and you went, that actually sounds like two customers that have bumped into each other. Well, one customer and a potential customer bumped into each other and were having a real conversation. Whereas on the other hand, it sounded like two people in a studio who didn't like each other, who were fighting for the last chocolate brownie that was on the plate.
Yeah, that's a bit of a difference.
Yeah, and you could hear the difference in their voice. But you even mentioned going back to like how their answering machine message is just as important. And I think people forget about that.
Totally, they do. There are kiosks in buildings that have a voice on them if you go to them. There's in-flight entertainment that has a voice on it. Each airline has a voice that does their announcements, you know, like the whole, put on your seatbelt the proper way type deal, right? Like every airline has a different audio brand that they use for these kinds of things. So we don't, I think, quite understand how many places this is actually in use. Because it's everywhere.
I think we take it for granted.
Yeah, we forget it's there. But if it doesn't jive with the actual business, then we notice it.
Okay, so if the audio's bad, we notice it. If the audio's good, we don't notice it because it just sounds good. So we feel comfortable and relaxed when we hear it.
It just sounds good, yeah. There's also another aspect of this, and that is if things get too clever, you forget what the actual product or service is.
Yes.
So you don't want to get so clever that people miss what the actual thing you're supposed to do is.
Yeah, they had a TV commercial over here it's for a company called Compare the Market. And if you spell market and meerkat slightly different, and so they had these meerkats on there saying, "No, you've picked the wrong place. This is Compare the Meerkat, not Compare the Market. You've gone to the wrong website." I must have seen that ad for 2 years before I even realized, because the ad was so good that, and I was so entertained by it.
Yeah.
It took me 2 years to figure out that they're actually talking about Compare the Market. But now I'm talking about, once I got my head around it, I went, oh, that's actually very clever. But it took 2 years for me to pick up on it.
See, that's clever, but it's not selling. It's not doing what it's supposed to do.
But it has in the long run. They just kept, I reckon they would have spent a lot of money eventually trying to get that point across, or I'm just slow.
Yeah, well, I mean, or it takes 2 years for someone to actually turn around and buy their service, which isn't useful to them. So I don't know. I mean, it depends. There's a lot of different aspects that go into this, but yeah, it can get distracting at the same time that it can be helpful.
And is that the same as combining music with a voiceover? You can choose the wrong music for the message, and it totally detracts and derails what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah, and the music could be too loud and the voice too soft, and then you're not hearing what the message is. Typically, when I do a voiceover, I love to hear the music that they're going to use beforehand, because that informs the tone that I will use in the voice that's on the commercial or the narration.
So if the music's going like really fast.
Yeah, then you have a different tone, unless, if it's a, xylophone type, happy-go-lucky kind of music. That's different. Your voice is going to be very different depending on
Okay,
that
so you'll
music.
normally request that. Is their music going to be with this voiceover? They say yes. Can you provide me the music? Would a professional company would probably provide it anyway, wouldn't they?
Well, they would if you ask. And it depends, because sometimes I'm coming into the process before they've even chosen the music. And in which case, I have to just do the best I can.
Okay. Do you ever do any voiceovers and just like an actor, it ends up on the editing room floor and it never goes
Oh,
ahead?
yeah.
That does happen?
Yeah, it totally happens. They don't do a campaign for some reason, or, it hasn't happened recently, thankfully. But, in the first few years when I was doing this, and it takes a while for you to get really good, because it's definitely a skill and you need coaching and there's a lot involved. But in those early years, there were one or two times where I did a spot and they paid me, and then when the spot aired, it was with someone else. Like that's happened, and that's a sting to the ego, let me tell you.
Well, I had a patient that came in the clinic once, and they were filming the Island of Dr. Moreau up here. And I don't know if you remember that movie, The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yep.
And I remember the patient coming in, and there were a couple of patients came in at the same time. They were friends. And they said, "Oh, we're all in this movie. It's coming out in a couple of weeks' time." And one of the guys said, if you shaved your head and acted like a lunatic, they paid you an extra $300. So he shaved his head and acted like a lunatic for the extra $300. When the movie actually came out, the scene that they shot for that got cut.
Yeah. Well, he got his $300.
He still got paid, but he just wanted to be seen in the movie.
Yeah.
And he missed.
Yeah, it's disheartening. You do your best. You do as what you feel is appropriate for the moment, and then it doesn't work out.
So what's it like when you hear your own voice? Are you driving in the car and all of a sudden you will hear it on a commercial, or you'll hear it somewhere else and you go, "Oh, that's me"? Does it make you get a little bit chuffed?
You know what? I was traveling to a music convention a little while back, and my husband and I stopped at a hotel in Columbus, and we were in the hotel restaurant just having some dinner, and on the television, they had my Unisom commercial. Unisom is a sleeping pill.
Okay.
And it's like one of those ones that you can get over the counter. So, and I was doing them for years. And my commercial came up on the television, and I have to say, I was pretty chuffed. It was like
So if like this podcast is aimed at small business people, entrepreneurs, what advice would you give them if somebody came up to you now and they said, "Okay, can you just give me like 3 things that I should be thinking about when it comes to using audio for my business"? Is there anything that just pops straight to mind?
I guess
Well, you've already covered a lot already.
yeah. My main one would be know what feeling you want your clients, your potential clients, or, the people that buy your products or services, know what you want them to feel. And when you figure that out, it's easier to figure out what kind of audio branding you want, because then you can pattern it towards making those people feel what you want them to feel.
Okay, so that's the first thing. Just give that some thought.
Yeah. Hire a professional. It doesn't have to be me by any means.
But if they did want to hire you, they can easily go to voiceoversandvocals.com.
They can totally do that, and I would love to work with them. But
that's the great part with the
I'm
internet.
not,
you're in another country.
I know.
It doesn't matter where you are.
It really doesn't. I have clients all over the world. However, if I'm not the one that's right for them and they want maybe a male voice, or they want someone that's older or younger than me, I have lots of friends and I can point them in the right direction if they need that kind of thing. But whether or not they'd be using me, a professional is going to give you what you want quickly.
Yeah.
And know how to interpret that script so that you don't have to do it 5 times. And they will give you good quality audio. which is going to be very important.
And then you can use that audio in many places.
Well, you can, but generally you pay for each usage.
Ah, right, okay.
So that's another thing. Yeah.
Ah, right. So if I get you to record something for me, then I'm only allowed to use it in one particular way that we agree upon.
Yes. So if you're getting audio for a television commercial, then we agree on a price and usage for a certain amount of time. Usually it's anywhere from 3 months to a year. And then if you want to use it for a radio commercial, that's a different thing entirely. So that's a different usage and a different price and, that kind of thing. Generally, it depends on how many eyeballs or ears are going to hear or see it.
Yeah.
So, it's based on how many people it's going to attract. So actually there is on my blog, there is a blog about usage that explains it a little more in detail so that people can understand how that works, because it can be confusing, but it's a lot like licensing music for a film.
Yeah, no, so this is what happens if somebody goes to a radio station and the radio station just goes and finds the talent and they just do the recording. There's no contracts or anything in between there. I've never seen
not usually. Yeah, but a lot of times if the radio station is doing it, it's their DJs doing it who do it for free.
Yeah.
Because they're not paid extra to do these. Right? It's part of their contract. Yeah,
probably is, because I have heard a lot of local radio announcers doing commercials for different places, and it pops up at different times.
No, I mean it's a difference of opinion, I guess. I would say go with a professional, but at the same time, if something that you're doing is local and you want the person who is the radio DJ who's recognizable to everyone who's listening to that station to endorse what you're doing, then that can work really well in your favor. I'm not saying that isn't an option. What I am saying is if you decide to go outside of the radio station for whatever reason, if you're doing a TV commercial, if you're doing your telephone system, if you're doing a narration for your website, you won't have that option. And if you go with a professional, you're likely to get what you want faster and with better quality.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think the quality, especially when it comes to audio, the quality is so important.
Well, you can pay an amateur twice, or you can pay someone twice in general. You pay the amateur once, and then you pay the professional to fix it. So it's, do you want to pay twice or once?
Yeah, you only want to pay once. Definitely want to pay once.
Exactly.
And like you said, and we've been talking about it, it's the quality of the sound. That is the big thing. So whether it's the message on an answering machine, whether it's the audio over the top of a TV commercial, a radio ad, the audio is so important. Even podcasts.
It really is.
I mean, I listen to some podcasts that have been around for a number of years, and some of these people are supposedly know what they're doing, and you'll listen to them and you go, my God, that was bad. The audio was really, really bad. Yet they just keep pumping it out the same way.
Yeah. And intro outros for podcasts are the same way. Generally, I would say that the person who's doing the podcast themselves should not be doing the intro or outro. I say generally because I've done this myself. And my podcasts are 4 minutes or less unless I'm interviewing someone. So if I was to do an intro outro, it would be half the podcast.
Well, I used to have my intro I used to actually have on the show. There's a radio announcer in Cairns called Steve Armett. He's just got a beautiful golden voice. And for probably the first 150 episodes, I used him as the intro. And then, probably about 30 episodes ago, I dropped the intro and I just went with the opening music and just me just introducing it, just saying.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The intro music is probably something that people got used to for your audio branding, and they're used to your voice. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Things evolve over time.
But it's if I was trying to do it the proper introduction like the radio guy was doing, because I did a little promo, a 30-second promo for somebody else's podcast. We were promoting each other's podcasts. And he said, can you do a 30-second thing what your podcast is about, and I'll use it. every time I hear it, I cringe. It is awful. I hear it and I go, that is so bad. I've got to redo it because it just sounds so unnatural.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gone...
It's hard. What I do is harder than it seems.
Yeah, and it's completely
So
different to
I'm
when...
just gonna.
But it's different when I'm on a podcast now and I'm just, say, starting the show and I go, hi, I'm Tyson Franklin and welcome to the It's No Secret with Dr. T. That's really simple because it just flows out. Nothing's written down. It just flows out.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was trying to do this 30-second promo for the podcast, it was a dog's breakfast.
Yeah, it can be hard to sound authentic when you're reading from a page.
Yeah.
It's just hard.
Your podcast, Jodi's Silver Linings. What's that about?
Yes, which is about to change, actually. That particular podcast I did 30 episodes of, and it was about helping creatives, which I am and probably you are, or you wouldn't be podcasting, or anyone that I work with tends to be a creative. It was kind of like a self-care for creatives because I know the inner workings of our brains can be really hard on ourselves.
Yeah, we can be sometimes.
Yeah. So I think there's something about that creative mindset that makes us particularly nasty inside our own heads.
We beat ourselves up a lot. I think creative people just have a tendency, and I think entrepreneurs do this in general. They, I was in the UK recently, and spent some time with a friend, Jonathan Small, and he, a fellow podiatrist, and he said what he notices with a lot of people is they'll hit a wall on something, it gets a little bit tough, so instead of just keep pushing to get through that wall, they take a step back, they try and pivot sideways, and then they hit the same wall, and they constantly do this year after year after year, and each time they pivot back, it's only because they're just beating themselves up again. Oh, this isn't going to work. Why am I bothering? Yeah, maybe I'm
or
not,
I can't do this.
Yeah,
who
I'm
do I
not
think
worthy.
I am?
Yeah,
this kind of thing.
How can I
exactly.
compete against these guys that have been doing it 10 years longer than me?
Yeah.
We mentally beat the living crap out of ourselves.
We totally do. Yeah. So that podcast, a lot of it involves helping my fellow creatives overcome that negative inner voice that we're all constantly hearing.
So you only did 30 episodes?
Yes. And I'm going to be pivoting. I am taking the 28-day challenge from Podcast Movement right now. So I'm working on
what are you going to do for that?
Things. I am actually going to do something on audio branding because I feel that is more in line with what I actually do.
But the 28-day challenge, what have you got to do over the 28 days?
It's a challenge that takes you through day by day in refining what your podcast is and where you want it to go and how, where the reach is and how it aligns with what you do. And I'm assuming also goes through how to get it on Apple iTunes and all of, who you host it with and all of that stuff as well.
The simple stuff.
Well, stuff that you and I have already been through and a lot of people have been through. You a lot longer than I have. This is only
it sounds like a good idea.
Podcast, I think. Yeah, it's a challenge, which is why they call it that. And I'm still learning. I'm still learning a lot. My podcast is really only a few months old. So I did 30 episodes, but it only started in June.
But I've seen podcasts where they might have 30 episodes and they'll tell me the name of their podcast. So straight away I will go to like Overcast or iTunes or Apple Podcasts, they call it now. And I go, I can't find it. And they go, no, we're not on there yet. And I go, why aren't you on there yet?
Yeah.
It's because they don't know how. They don't know how to do it. And it
depends on who you're hosting with. So Libsyn and Buzzsprout and all of these different places, they give you tools in order to be able to submit your podcast to each of these things like Google Play and Stitcher and all of the ones that...
iHeartRadio, Spotify.
Yeah, there's tons of them. So a lot of these podcast hosting programs or services will give you direct links to help you figure that out. So I was lucky enough to have some instruction when I first started.
Yeah, I was the same. Somebody said to me right from the beginning, if you're going to take this serious, then go with the best. And that's how I ended up with Libsyn. That's how I ended up using Adobe Audition to do the editing with.
Yes.
And then down the track, all my recording that I do now is on a Zoom H6, even though we're running it through Zoom, which is different to Zoom H6.
Yes.
So yeah, I learned from people, and they just said, if you're going to take it serious, then do it seriously. Don't try and cut too many corners. So
They gave you good advice.
Yeah, I thought it was good advice,
Yeah.
and that's usually what I tell everybody else. I go, yes, there's a free program here, but it doesn't do this. Yes,
that's very true.
You can record on this, but the quality isn't as good as if you recorded it on the Zoom H6. So there's all these different ways of doing things.
Sure. I use Adobe Audition in my studio, so yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Most people I talk to who are really good in the audio world, Libsyn, Adobe Audition, they do have a Zoom H6 or an equivalent. They just have good equipment. Good.
I actually started in Libsyn, and I'm with Buzzsprout now.
Oh, okay. Why the change?
I like the interface better. Libsyn seemed a bit clunky to me. Not that it didn't have good aspects of it. It was very comprehensive, and it did a lot of things, but I just didn't like the interface at all. And I prefer Buzzsprouts.
Okay.
And that's just me. There's lots of people who have differences of opinion with who they're using. But they also have a lot of links to help you submit your podcast to all of the places that you would want to submit to.
So, Jody, have you got any final words of wisdom before we wrap up?
Final words of
wisdom.
Oh, my goodness.
You're walking down the street, somebody bumps into you, and they go, oh, I recognise your voice from It's No Secret with Dr. T, my favourite podcast. And can you give me just one final tip?
You know what? I would say that if we're talking about life in general, make the life that you want. So if, like we were talking about before, if you don't enjoy some things in your business, outsource it to someone else who can do it. It's worth paying that person to get that off your plate, just to make your life better. And if that means having a housekeeper, if that means having someone do your lawn, like anything that this happens to be in your life, you can make your life better by having someone else do that for you. There's nothing wrong with that.
That is great advice. And I do follow that advice when and where I can.
Sure.
Which is why I'm always smiling.
That's good.
So, Jody,
smiling is good.
I want to thank you for coming on It's No Secret with Dr. T and sharing your wisdom and a little bit on the background of what a voice actor is all about. And I think you've shared some really, really great information that anyone that listens to this, if you didn't enjoy it, as I normally say, give yourself an uppercut because that's what you deserve. So, Jody, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to Jody today and learnt a little bit more about the ins and outs of being a voice actor. So if you've got a pretty cool voice yourself, maybe it's something you could get into. But like you said, there is a lot of training involved to do it the right way. What I thought was really important was when we were just talking about audio in general, and we're not just talking about audio for a radio commercial. Think back to even what's the answering machine message at your work? When people ring your business after hours, what message is that actually saying, and how does that portray your business? Does it fit in with your brand or doesn't it fit in with your brand? But since then, it even made me think about your mobile phone. What message do you have in your mobile phone? And is it really clear, and does it say what you do and who you are? Or is it just a mismatch of, I don't know, just something that you quickly threw together because you think it didn't really mean too much? So just give that some thought. So my guest next week is Stephanie Y. Cole. Now, I met Stephanie in Atlantic City as well, the same place I met Jody at the podcast conference, MapCon, which is now called the Independent Podcast Conference, and it will be on again next year in 2020. And Stephanie is a storyteller. She told a really cool story about the local bodega where she lives in New York City. And after listening to her talk, I went, I've got to get you on It's No Secret with Dr. T, and we're going to talk about storytelling and the power of storytelling. So that's what's coming up next week. Before I go, it's only about 4 or 5 weeks to Christmas. It's coming around pretty quick. If you don't know what to buy someone for Christmas this year, think about getting a copy of It's No Secret, There's Money in Small Business. You can get it on Amazon regardless of where you are in the world, or if you live in Australia, you can order it directly from our website, tysonfranklin.com. So go and check it out. So that's it for me this week. Look after yourself, look after your family, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye for now.